Welcome back. Before we continue on with the next topic, Chase and I would like to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Although we're pretty much all over social media, along with several podcast streams, we're working to build up our visual media outlets, and we need your help. Thank you. The Kogod School of Business at American University in Washington, D.C. has developed its own Made in America Auto Index. Led by Frank Dubois, the Kogod Made in American Auto Index helps consumers determine, quote, how American, unquote, a car actually is by evaluating and ranking over 500 car models based on their country of origin and several factors that can be found on a vehicle's label in the showroom. Important note, the 2021 Kogod Index ranked 342 vehicles. I checked. Where this index differs is the fact that it includes additional factors, such as the location of the headquarters of an automaker and where research and development for the vehicle actually takes place. Reason being, the money goes home to headquarters, which means while GM is considered a domestic manufacturer, believe it or not, Stellantis, which means Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, is not. They're based in the Netherlands. That's their home office.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Exactly. And some of these vehicles, the big problem, and here's the takeaway, is the way that the numbers currently work for the feds is that they average a lot of stuff. So and they have to estimate. Their standards require them to estimate at the beginning of the model year what their take rate's going to be for high-level equipment, low-level equipment. In other words, break down how you think you're going to sell this stuff. And based on that information, then we can figure out what components are going into that vehicle. Then we can figure out the percentage of made in America. That's a problem.
So with this, do we know what vehicles are the most made in America?
Sort of. Well, that's the problem.
Yeah. Well,
that is actually the problem.
Yeah.
Other rankings do not always take into account, and that's what he's talking about. In the case of the Kogod Index, 7 criteria are considered, and these are different from the AALA. Profit margin, labor, the location of research and development are several that the AALA does not talk about. He gives an example. The data, and we talked about in the last segment how US/Canadian parts is problematic because it doesn't separate US from Canadian parts, which means this number can still be applied to all the vehicles in the car line, even if it appears it shouldn't. He gives an example. He's found cars made in Japan with a Japanese engine and transmission using the same US-Canadian parts content number as other versions of the same vehicle with a US engine, transmission, and assembly. Why? Because you can average it out over the car line. So it does not really help you if you're using the AALA by itself if you're really, really serious about finding out what's made in America. I'm going to skip down, and he talks about his 7 things. He picks up inventory, capital, and other expenses. The feds don't. Body, chassis, and electrical components. The feds don't. One big thing that he talks about, and I want to skip down to it because he gives some advice. Frank Dubois gives some solid advice under what should a consumer do. If a consumer is interested in knowing more about a U.S. content of a car, start with the VIN number. The first digit in most cases tells you where the car is assembled. A quick Google search will provide the code for different VIN numbers. Next, you do use the AALA data, which is required, like we said in the previous segment, to be displayed at all new cars sold in the U.S. However, for used cars or cars not covered in the Kogod Auto Index, the raw AALA data is still found on the National Highway and Transportation Administration's website. So you can go there as a start. But basically what he's saying, if you're serious about finding out whether your specific vehicle is made in America, the one you're looking at, the VIN number holds the key because it tells you different things for that specific vehicle. Because remember, under the American Automobile Labeling Act, they average across a car line. So what you're seeing when you see content numbers, that's average. So that's the high trim level, the medium trim level, and the low trim level, even if they have different engines made in different countries.
So what's some discoveries we've learned with the Kogod one?
The fact that in some cases, A Chevy Cruze made in Mexico has more American content than a BMW made in Spartanburg, North Carolina.
That's cool. That's what I wanted to hear.
That's, one of many examples that your supposed American-made car may not be nearly as American as you think. And it changes from year to year. An automaker can change the source of where they get an engine from. Maybe they get the engine from the United States this year. Maybe for whatever reason, they now source it out of a factory out of Spain. Totally changes. So even information that was last year may not be true this year. And also the money, depending on how you choose to measure it, how serious you are about made in America. And there are a lot of people that says, well, I won't buy that car because they're an X company. They're from this country. Maybe. But do you feel the same way about your Jeep, your Ram, or your Dodge, knowing that the company is no longer based in Auburn Hills, it's based in the Netherlands, and therefore is considered foreign for the purposes of these surveys?
Why is it considered that way?
In the Kogod survey, part of that information and part of their ranking is where the headquarters is located. It's one thing that the AALA doesn't address even. And for some people, it's really important because that's where the capital flows. And you're looking at the benefit. Made in America means a benefit for Americans. And where the money, you follow the money. If they're based in the United States, then the money stays here, theoretically. If it's not in the United States, the money is expatriated to whatever country they're from. It's been the biggest issue. However, it doesn't ring true always for the Japanese because they got a lot here and their headquarters here. They source a lot of stuff right in America, not even Canada and Mexico always. And it's funny because the domestic companies, what we call the traditional domestics, tend to source both Canada and Mexico as well as the United States. And while Canada is considered domestic, Mexico, believe it or not, is not, regardless of NAFTA or even the new agreement they signed. It's still listed as a foreign country in the AALA labeling. But we can't tell you what the Canadian content is by itself.
What lessons do you think have been learned from COVID and some of the supply chain issues?
A trend is reversing from outsourcing to resourcing, or reshoring as they call it. A lot of that stuff's coming home, if for no other reason than they don't want to get strung out on the supply chain. They don't want to be exposed to a lot of unintended consequences, be it COVID, be it supply chain problems, be it a major container ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal, which happened in the midst of all of this. And it jacked up things for 3 months. Or your parts sitting buried in the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach because they don't have truckers to get it out or warehouses to stage it from.
And now, as we've talked about too, with electric vehicles having less parts, if you just keep it all together, then the supply chain could be a lot more minimal.
Automakers, and this is for another episode, but automakers are building battery plants in the United States of America to resolve just that. And it's going to be phenomenal. Also, bear in mind, fewer parts, more automation, and eventually lower cost. And we talked about that in previous shows. And that actually will help the Made in America because Tesla always scores well.